on this. Thank you. Thank you, Kitty, for allowing me to press the record button. So this webinar today is all about satisfaction. And when people think about intuitive eating, they think about the 2 webinars that I've done so far. They think about hunger and fullness and satisfaction. When people think about intuitive eating, they sometimes can't even think about it as like the hunger fullness diet. Gauging by my face, I'm not loving this. People think it's like eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full, and you've encompassed intuitive eating and you're on your way. This is like nuanced, right? Like this is the deep work of actually exploring and attuning to your body's cues and sensations to have it guide us to knowing what, when, and how much to eat. And when we can like hone in on these like nuances, these more subtle aspects of hunger and fullness, we can actually, instead of having it be like a dichotomous thinking of like eat during this time and not during this time and making it like a black and white kind of mentality, I encourage you to like lean into your own experience of kind of realizing all of those more gentler, subtler sensations of hunger, like we talked last week. You know, the quieter sensations of hunger before hunger gets really loud. And the same thing with fullness, the more subtle sensations of fullness before fullness gets really loud. And by loud, I mean like very hungry. And I also mean like stuffed. And to kind of preface this webinar today, I just want to say, you know, like in food and in life, if something's not satisfying, we're just not happy, you know? Yeah. So at the root of all of this, like the reason why we eat and the reason why food is pleasurable is because, is it wrong to say we're looking for happiness? Is it wrong to say that like food can be a source of like happiness, comfort, satisfaction, joy? So Amanda, thank you for what you were saying earlier about like digging the approach to intuitive eating being like a positive thing. Mm-hmm. And thank God it is, because if food wasn't pleasurable, our whole species would cease to exist. I mean, we just wouldn't do it. Right? You know? So let's just open up this webinar with just like this standpoint of like deserving to feel like we can have pleasure with food experiences and feeling an element of safety with satisfaction as well. Realizing that it's okay to feel hungry and it's okay to feel full. And it's okay to eat maybe not when you're hungry. And it's okay to eat even when you're full. This is not rules today. I'm not giving you more food rules to add to your list of any diet rules you might have in your mind. This will help you sort of like unpack what you've already been kind of like sifting through. Oh, awesome. A dial-in. Cool. And also, if I could ask Amanda and this dial-in number, I'm thinking this might be Megan. If you guys want to mute your microphones for right now, just for the recording, sometimes it gets a little bit scratchy. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So I want to start off this webinar by talking about how we feel our fullness. What does fullness feel like at a meal? Anybody want to chime in? Like, how would you like define fullness?
You just had me mute myself.
Sorry, I did. I know, I'm realizing. Unmute again.
Ask the question again.
What does it feel like to feel fullness?
So, it's interesting because like when I don't think about it too much, right? When I'm like, okay, at lunch, I'm going to have a salad because like I'm craving a salad and I eat it. And afterwards, like, I just feel ready to go instead of like I've eaten too much or I've limited myself, right? Like if it's like, I'm going to have like a protein shake, but then you drink the protein shake and you're like, all right, well, I guess I had my meal now, but I don't feel full. So to me, it's when you've eaten something, you feel good about it, you've enjoyed it, and then you just like move on. Like you're not even really like, it didn't have to be this big thing to think about, right?
Yes. So it's like that middle spot where you said like, I'm ready to go. Oh, look at this dog. Like feeling like ready to go. You didn't deprive yourself. Oh, cute. So it feels like the sweet spot in the middle of like not depriving ourselves and not feeling over full. It's kind of like that sweet spot of just like feeling that comfortable level of fullness in the middle of those two aspects. Would you agree that that's like a comfortable feeling of fullness between depriving and feeling overfull.
Yes.
Cool. Katie, do you have anything to add to that? Like what fullness feels like? Like comfortable level of fullness, maybe?
I think that, I mean, like, that sounded like a really good description. I think when I'm like really thinking about it, it's like when I'm like, oh, maybe I'm done eating. Like, I don't really want any more.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want to finish. Like, I'm good.
The I'm good. And your body gives you a cue that says, okay, whatever's on the plate, I'm good with it. And you kind of get like this, I'm sensing it's more of like a biological cue. You're talking about more of like that physical cue that says, okay, this in my stomach and in my body feels like the right time to stop eating. Cool. Yeah. Can I ask who's on the audio? Would you like to include anything else? And if not, that's totally cool. I just don't want to exclude you from the conversation. I'm thinking this is Megan.
Hi. Yeah, it's Megan.
Hey, Megan.
I think I don't really have much to add. I think those are pretty good examples.
Yes, I would agree. Thanks for saying that. So it seems like, if we were to draw like another tool that I can give you right now, Amanda, you might have this tool already, but we talked about the hunger meter. I'd like to give you a satisfaction meter as well. And this will compass what we just talked about, but it'll give like an actual structure to think about this with. So if you drew like a horizontal line on your paper, and on one end you made a tick on the left-hand side that was like emptiness, like complete emptiness. And on the all the way on the right-hand side, this would be like stuffed or sick, almost like that point of feeling really sick with how much you've maybe overeaten at times. We've all been there. So feeling really empty or like stuffed sick, like Thanksgiving, maybe. And in the middle, you can put a tick right in the middle of that horizontal line that kind of encompasses like that sweet spot. And around that tick, draw a circle. So you have one end is empty, the other end is stuffed or sick. And in the middle, you have this tick with a circle around it, which encompasses the sweet spot, because I don't want to make it seem like it's this linear point where it's like, here's the sweet spot and it's only here. We're going to sometimes be a little bit in the overfull category. We're going to be a little bit in the deprived category, but it's around that sweet spot of satisfaction where you could pull away from that meal and feel like you've gotten energy from that meal, that food gave you energy. You're on the go. Amanda, you kind of mentioned like, okay, I'm ready to move on to the next thing. My mind is no longer on food anymore, and I'm satisfied enough to like hold me over until I'm ready to eat again. Would you agree or disagree that if we're in a deprived state, kind of leaning towards emptiness, that we're not really feeling satisfied or feeling our fullness? Would you also agree that if we're like leaning towards that overfullness, it's almost like too loud and we're surpassed that like comfortable feeling of fullness? So that sweet spot has to be like right in the middle of those two categories. And we can't be deprived or overfull to feel like we've reaped the energy from that food and we're ready to fully transition on to the next thing. Would you agree or disagree that both of those realms have us still thinking about food? Either we're thinking about how much we ate and we're still thinking about, oh, I've ate too much and now I have to recover, or we're still deprived and we're still thinking about food as well. I'd like to bring some attention here to the power of the mind and having like attuning to the mind as well as the body. If we're still thinking about food and we're observing those thoughts as they come in, that can give us clues as to where our tuning is as well, even in the mind. I don't talk about that enough. I always talk about listen to your body. But even if the thoughts start in your mind, that's a good place to start. We're very like mindy, intellectual beings. The people that I attract to my clients are like me most times. I'm in this work because it's so hard to listen to the body a lot of the time, right? I've had to practice this. But if I can meet myself in the mind and say, okay, if I'm thinking about food, I might still be hungry, something's still missing. Or if I'm still thinking about food and I'm thinking about how full I am, I'm probably in the overfull or stuffed category here. Where is this landing for you both so far? Is this relatable in your own experience?
Yeah, it completely. What you're saying is right. Like when you're satisfied is when you're in the sweet spot. And it is when you're at those opposite spectrums And I can relate to the fact of I like the concept of meeting in your mind instead of listening to your body, because sometimes your body like lies to you, right? Because it's stressed out. It's telling you like, oh, you really want this, and like you don't want that at all. You need something else that your mind actually needs, right? So I think that's very interesting to like do it through that process instead of being like, oh, I really want that, and you're like, you don't want that. You don't know what you want.
I can see. I could see what you're saying. There's like this struggle between like the mind and the body, and there's like conflicting thoughts there, and you're like, I don't know what to listen to. But yes, I do agree that like the mind can give us like these cues.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if it's really circulating in the mind, let's bring some attention and focus to that. Maybe that could have us like illuminate, you know, like maybe we're depriving, maybe we're over full. If it's ruminating in the mind, we're probably in one or the other. Totally. Katie, do you have anything to add to that?
I thought it was really interesting that you were saying like if you're still thinking about food, like you're probably not in that sweet spot. Because I think like I found myself in moments where I'm like, oh, like I'll just eat a little bit more and then I'll be fine, or like I'll just eat a little bit like a dessert and then I'll be fine. When I already am a little bit full, and then it just like triggers me. I'm not satisfied at that point. And so I thought it was really interesting. I've been focusing a lot on like, am I hungry? Am I not hungry? Do I want something while I'm thinking about food? So maybe I'm hungry, versus like flipping that script and being like, but am I thinking about food because I'm not hungry? You know what I mean? Because I'm over full. Was an interesting way to think about that too, I guess.
Sure. Yes. And it can happen in both ways. The thought of like processing the food experience to see where you're at. But one is definitely like more of like that emptiness feeling. And one is definitely more of that like physical over fullness feeling. And so now Amanda, I'm just gonna ask, did you come to one of my hunger sessions for intuitive eating at GenStar?
Yes.
Okay. So you have the hunger. I thought, yes. So you have my hunger meter, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So now you have the hunger meter and now you have the satisfaction meter. And I want to bring some light to both. And I know, Megan, we haven't talked about the hunger meter yet, but we're going to touch base on this as well. And for anybody who's watching this webinar on the recording, you can go back and listen to the hunger webinar recording if you are interested in getting that hunger meter. But if we lean into that hunger meter, there's like this section on the hunger meter that's like really at the far end where hunger gets really loud. Bringing some reference to that, how is when our hunger is really loud and we are like starving, how does that relate to achieving fullness or satisfaction in your experiences? When we let hunger get really loud, how are we able to find satisfaction in that? What generally happens for you both, if you care to share?
You just eat whatever you can find and how fast you can find it, right? You know,
True.
I come home and it's just like, and then you like 5 minutes later, you stop and you're like, did I even want any of that? Like I'm hungry, but I didn't even take time to think about what does my body want to feel satisfied. So you don't feel satisfied even though you filled your stomach, right?
Katie, do you have anything to add to that?
And no, that was a really good description of it.
So true. Megan, how about yourself? And if you have nothing to add, that's completely fine. I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, I think that's the best example. I think when you let it get that bad, you're not even thinking, you're just acting.
That's so true. We are now in like reaction mode instead of like respond mode. Referencing the window of tolerance. Maybe we'll do another webinar on that. But yeah, so like when we let ourselves get like over full, it's really hard to find satisfaction because it becomes a very unconscious eating experience. Why? Because the body will do whatever it can to just get its needs met. You know, the body is just like wanting to meet its needs and it's going to do whatever it can. It's like, hey, it's kind of like flown you the bird and is like, you didn't honor my hunger all of this time. So now the floodgates are open, food is available. I'm going to eat whatever's available because I wasn't able to honor my hunger sooner, and I'm going to like just get my needs met. But this really doesn't lend itself to a very conscious eating experience. And oftentimes our body, for every action, there's an equal but opposite reaction. And so we lend ourselves into kind of more of that overfullness or stuffed from being deprived. So do you see how we could use both of those meters? We're thinking, okay, now using the hunger meter, we're now in like this, really, really hungry category, 7, 8, 9, 10, to really, really stuffed. And neither of those are very enjoyable experiences with food. And biologically, we kind of get into this feast versus famine mindset. Our body's not trusting when we're going to feed it again. So oftentimes that plays in to feeling that over fullness, is because our body's like, I have to store up because I don't know when you, meaning me, my body, is going to get fed again. So that lends ourselves to overeating, fearing deprivation coming on. So do you see the cycle of deprivation and overeating being the constant cycle of famine and feast? Any questions on that? What is the solution then? Instead of going from famine to feast, under eating and then overeating, which is very common for anybody who's dieted or been on diets before, because we're taught restriction and then our body just wants to get our needs met. So that's feast and famine just in a nutshell with diet mentality. What is the solution to that? Using like that hunger meter and satisfaction meter, like what do you think is the solution to actually getting our needs met using those meters as a tool to articulate?
So for me, it's I'm a very scheduled person.
Yeah.
I like things. So like COVID's a nightmare for me, right? Because nothing's scheduled. But I have like I can eat the same thing all the time. So like every morning I have steel cut oats and like love it. It is like my thing. And so that is how I keep my meter on track, right? Like when I follow it, I have breakfast, I have a snack in the morning, I have my lunch, I have a snack in the afternoon, I have dinner. Then I don't even think about food, right? Like, and I'm satisfied with what I'm eating.
Mm-hmm.
It's when I don't eat my oatmeal in the morning and now it's 11 o'clock.
Okay.
Oh no. Well, now we've just thrown everything off and my body is already, it's not going to be happy with what I do. It's like, I don't trust you anymore. So like what you were saying, like you've now deprived me of what I'm used to. So you're going to have a repercussion for that. So that's kind of how if I stay on track, it's good.
And when you say stay on track, Amanda, you mean when you honor your hunger when it shows up?
Yeah.
Is that what
Yeah.
you mean? Yes.
Yeah.
So it's like what I'm hearing for you is if you let hunger get too loud, then things get a little catty down the line. The eating after that from that point on is like a kind of catch-up game towards that hunger, right? So then we get in the extremes of hunger and then maybe the extremes of that fullness or stuffed feeling as well, just by the body trying to get its needs met. But for you, like your schedule keeps you in the middle of those 2 meters, keeps you within the threshold of like, a comfortable level of hunger and a comfortable level of fullness.
Yes.
That would require, just so I'm understanding correctly, it would require anticipation of hunger and recognizing the feeling of fullness.
Yes, exactly.
Is this
and then
yes. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and not like being structured in the fact of I understand when my body needs to eat, and then I understand how much it needs to feel satisfied yet not over full. And that sounds all really nice, but I definitely don't do that all the time. So just want to make that clear to everyone on the call. You know, it's the thing of like, I know what to do. I just I'm not always able to do it, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, so true. No intuitive eater is a perfect eater. That's not even like the goal, because it's like, we don't do unrealistic stuff here. I mean, it's like, same here, Amanda. That's what I'm thinking, you know? Like, we're here to like know what it feels like and to gain like positive experiences with food. This doesn't mean it's perfect all the time, but it means like that element of consciousness is there. And that's why we're like flipping on this call, right? To like get reminders of bringing consciousness to eating. Thanks for sharing that, Amanda. Like, yes, not perfection, but the awareness is so key. So again, just to like amplify your experience and relating it to those 2 meters, keeping ourselves within the middle spheres of honoring hunger before hunger gets really loud can help us meet that sweet spot of satisfaction. So we're not depriving, and we're not necessarily letting ourselves get into that overfullness or stuffed category. That will help us get into that sweet spot. But this is most true if we're only talking about the physical plane right now. This, I'm really talking about like that physical feeling of fullness when I'm referencing that satisfaction chart. So Katie, in your notes, if you're taking notes right now, like you can put like physical fullness is really what I'm talking about using that bar of satisfaction, because I'm talking about that physical feeling of emptiness or that physical feeling of stuffedness. But now I'm going to get into like the mental and emotional realm, because right now, like you and I, we could eat like an entire bag of like kale. Oh my God, my gut just like went into like this huge knot, even just saying that. Who's going to be satisfied? Shake your heads if you're satisfied with an entire bag of kale. No, it's disgusting. Okay? No, we should not be eating that. Don't blend it up, don't saute it, nothing with an entire bag of kale. Do not do it to yourself. But would you feel physically full? Yeah, it's a crap ton of fiber. So there's the physical feeling of fullness, but there's also that like mental and emotional feeling of fullness, which now lends itself to that conversation about satisfaction. So now I want to like bridge the 2 concepts of fullness and satisfaction together. Because fullness can be observed physically, but satisfaction is met when that fullness is mentally and emotionally met as well, when we're feeling mentally and emotionally satisfied with food. So here are some tactical things that you can do to kind of like help with those feelings of satisfaction. Before I get into that, caveat to this conversation is that we cannot feel our fullness and we cannot feel completely satisfied with a meal if we do not allow ourselves any and all permission to eat any and all foods. If we don't allow ourselves unconditional permission to eat any and all foods to our own level of determined fullness, we will not be able to lean into fullness and we will not be able to achieve satisfaction. Why? Because the deprivation mindset exists and we don't know when our body will be able to get that need met again. Every time, bar none. Same thing with fun foods, ice cream, Twix bar, things like that. And also with healthy foods, the fruits and vegetables of the world. Both categories, if we don't allow ourselves any and all permission to eat all these foods, then that deprivation mindset exists, and we oftentimes find ourselves restricting and overeating. Okay, with that, let's dive into satisfaction and how we can find more satisfaction with mealtimes, right? But yeah, so that's really like the crux of intuitive eating is really that piece, but I'm just interjecting that piece into like that, the hunger snippet and the fullness snippet, knowing that none of this is really possible if we're still in a restrictive mindset with food. That makes it then the hunger fullness diet, which intuitive eating is not. Okay, so how can we be satisfied with food and in life? Yes, we're looking for happiness. You should be happy with what you're eating. You should find pleasure in eating. If the pleasure is taken away from food, oftentimes nutrition also suffers as well. That's a quote by Ellen Satter. She's marvelous. When the joy is taken out of food, nutrition often also suffers. we're not reaping all of the benefits. Even if we're just looking for nutrient value, we're missing out on other aspects as well, most often. So one way, and I have just like 4 ways to share with you how to find more satisfaction in meal times. I'm just going to riff these off and I'll allow some time for questions after this. The first one, to achieve satisfaction, we have to ask ourselves, what do we really want? What sounds good to me right now? Amanda, your example of the steel cutouts, it seems like you pop up every morning and you're just like, out of everything in the world that I could have for breakfast, steel cutouts, 10 out of 10. Fired up. I'm loving that. Steel cutouts. Katie, whatever comes into your mind for like your first meal of the day, what do you have anything in mind that like would so be like you wake up tomorrow morning? Does anything like sound good right away for you in the morning? Anything come to mind?
I really love like eggs and potatoes.
Oh, eggs and potatoes out of everything in the world that I could have. Yes. Brilliant. For me, I found these gluten-free pancakes that have been marvelous. I'll bench that for a different time because I'm going to riff for a half an hour on how much I love these pancakes. I have celiac disease, and these are like gluten-free pancakes that work. They're not gummy. They're not weird. They rise well. All of the things that I want in a pancake they have. Cut me off. Pancakes have been like the thing. Ask me next week. It's going to be something different. But right now, pancakes. So asking yourself what you really want is going to lead to a more satisfying food experience than going on autopilot. What I mean going on autopilot, I mean kind of getting unconscious with food. This means just like, maybe you're really busy and you're just grabbing something, whatever it is, out the door. That's great because our body might be hungry and we need to get our needs met. But at the same time, it might not lead to as satisfying of a food experience as if we step back and ask ourselves like, what sounds really good with right now with what I have available to me? How could I get creative with what I have available to me as well? Maybe it's not just pancakes. Maybe it's pancakes and fruit. Maybe it's pancakes with like a nice cup of coffee with heavy cream. Perfect. That would be my middle name right now. But like, see like how you could make a meal really satisfying, but with what you really want. And how can you get what you really want? Again, this is not possible in a restrictive mindset because we're already looking at like the select group of foods that we're allowing ourselves to have. So with that, we're already giving that authority for like what we really want. We don't have that. That gets put on the back burner. Something else is going to be telling us what to eat. Oh, weight loss says I have to eat this. So then that authority gets taken away and we can't even get to what we really want. It's not going to lead to a really satisfying food experience. This is why also diets don't work. The second thing is to discover like what your palate is asking for. Like, do I want something hot? Do I want something cold? What kind of texture am I looking for? Like, do I want like yogurt texture or do I want like crisp? Like using your senses to kind of explore what a food could taste like. All of your senses. What is the aroma like that I'm looking for right now? Things like that. How can we like leverage our senses? The appearance of a food, the volume of a food totally matters. Like what kind of volume am I looking for right now? This goes back to the hunger meter. Am I looking for something like light right now? Maybe I'm not very high on the hunger meter. And maybe if I'm higher on the hunger meter, I'm looking for something a little bit more dense. I'm getting a little bit more hungry. I'm going to need more like energy packed volume rather than less energy packed volume. This is going to be like nut butter rather than salad, cucumbers. You hear me? So even that like can kind of get us down to assess like, okay, what do I really want? Now I'm going to do some sifting through like all of my options. This could even start with something as simple. Are you both coffee drinkers or no? Okay. Something as simple as like, do I want my coffee hot or iced today? Interesting, right? Like this could open itself up to a whole new world of like, I've been drinking hot coffee every morning because I just like wake up, I'm half awake, it's what's available, but like iced coffee, joy with food, maybe that hits the spot. Maybe that helps hit that sweet spot of satisfaction beyond just physical with food, but also this mental and emotional realm too. Is this kind of like tying in together and making some sense? Cool. This is like the mental and emotional realm, just kind of like pull that concept of satisfaction back. the 3 S's of satisfaction. This comes from Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resser's book, Intuitive Eating. I just want to like bring some light into these things. To eat slowly, to savor your food. And this is like my least favorite word ever, but it's sensual, like sensually have a sensual experience with food. These are the 3 S's. I don't like the word sensual, you guys. But eat slowly, sensually, and savor the food. So if you don't remember anything else, those are 3 S's to bring more consciousness back into the food experience. Thanks for laughing at the word sensually. I just don't really like it. But I always remember slowly, sensually, and savor the food experience. I mean, head nods. If you're running out the door and you're like cramming things in your mouth, you might physically feel full, but are you sometimes even like looking for more food because you feel like you missed out? It's like, okay, that happened, but like I wasn't there. I missed out totally on that food experience. Can we start over? Exactly. So it's like, oh, we want to be present and conscious so we can hit that sweet spot mentally and emotionally as well. And the last thing that I want to say is when you're really not in a depriving mindset, when the diet mentality is gone, what's funny, what I'm seeing in my experience with clients and with myself too, is that we don't settle for food we don't like anymore. You know, we don't settle for, unless we have to because something else is pending. And if we have time to spend on food that's enjoyable, like don't settle on something if it's not exactly how we want it, where we can get our needs met. You know, for example, like, you know, you've made this salad and it looks aesthetically pleasing and it's the kind of like texture that you wanted and it's got this color and you're like, oh, this is what I'm planning to have a really great experience. And then it's like missing something and you're like, oh, this is not it. You go back to the fridge and you're like piling on. Okay, does it need cheese? Does it need nuts? What is it like? Is there anything that I can do? Is it just my dressing? Is it acid? You know, like this lends itself, like the not settling, lends itself to a realm of culinary exploration that is so fun. Like this is where food can be fun when we're not settling for it anymore and where we can like lend ourselves to exploring with more food and what satisfaction can really look like on multiple levels. So this is where like where satisfaction becomes something that like is pleasure seeking and fun rather than being put into a box and oftentimes feeling like pleasure, not today. We're just eating to eat. We're eating for nutrient value. We're clearing the plate. We're going on autopilot. That is the opposite of being conscious, being aware and letting ourselves like really feel into that experience of both physical fullness, the sweet spot, and also mental and emotional satisfaction. This is where food becomes more fun because like I said, if we're not satisfied with food or in life, we're kind of unhappy. We're kind of irritable. We're kind of looking for something more. So we're looking for how to be happy and satisfied with our food. How does this land with you both? What are your takeaways from this call? I could keep you here all night, but I'd love to know, like, from each of you, if you're willing to share, like, where did this conversation about fullness, either using the hunger meter or satisfaction and how to use these key points of satisfaction, where does this land with you?
I think something for me that I'm really bad about forgetting is like eating slowly. Because I can think back to the times that I've done, like even Alicia and I were talking about the other day how I had a lot of fun with like a snack meal that was like apples and grapes and a little bit of turkey and some like hip peas. But I like eat it really quickly and then I'm like, oh, well, I want, versus like the days that I sit there and really like take time to eat it. And even if it's, I live alone. So even if it's while I'm like watching a TV show or like talking on the phone to a friend, like it's so much more satisfying when it's spread out over 30 minutes versus 3. And I think I get really bad about that too because I live alone. Like it's not like I sit down at the dinner table with somebody. So like most of my meals are just like, oh, let me eat this real fast and move on to the next thing. So that, and then also like, what do I really want? I've been trying to be better about asking that question, but even when it comes down to like, oh, I really want a cookie. Okay, well, like, do I want that with water? Do I want that with almond milk? Like you were talking about taking it a step further. And I don't think that I've incorporated that a lot, but I think that that could definitely add to like the satisfaction level of like milk and a cookie is much more satisfying than like a cookie and walking to do the next thing.
So I'm seeing a couple of things here, and Katie, just to like reflect this back to you. It's like two things majorly you want to take away from this call of like taking the time to eat slower, even if you're by yourself. Maybe think about like what you could change maybe in your environment to make this experience maybe more conscious. Sometimes when we're alone, it's like we don't take the time to like think about these things, but what do you want music playing in the background? You know, like do you want to put a placemat down? This kind of goes into like mindful eating, which is like totally incorporated within intuitive eating. Intuitive eating is larger, but mindful eating is kind of what we're talking about right now. Like how can we create more of a conscious eating experience and have it be in a time frame where you can enjoy it? Time is a big one. Eating slower and kind of like savoring that experience drawn out over like a 20-minute period rather than like grabbing and going. That would lead to more consciousness with food. Yes, and then also like how can we make this more like juicy and delicious? You know, like what could we layer on to this? What else does it need? How could we, if I'm gonna have this cookie, oh, how am I gonna savor this cookie? You know, how am I gonna like make the most out of this food experience? I often like imagine like, okay, oh, we're in where Amanda was traveling to that got, you know, canceled. So sorry to bring that up, but it's just like, here I am on vacation. Like you're really like in your house, Katie, but it's like, imagine you're like in vacation and this was like the thing. And this cookie was just made out of like magic flour and like you were just having it. Like how could we make that experience more real? This is me like taking it next level, but some like measure of that, right? Like
I love it.
come on, how could we like have fun with this food experience rather than the cookie is there and it's gone and we feel like we've missed out? So two things. Very cool, Katie. Thank you for showing. Allowing more time and asking yourself like how I can make this experience more satisfying were the two things that I took away from your takeaway. Cool. Thanks for sharing. Amanda, anything that popped up for you?
Yeah, so interesting. I like the three S's, and I get your thing with the word sensual, but so I have this tradition in my house that on Friday night we have pizzas, like all the time. Like my family would think it was completely weird if we didn't have pizza on Friday night, and we all look forward to it all week long. And so as you were talking through the three S's, I was thinking about that. And part of the reason is because on Friday nights, we all slow down. So we slowly enjoy our pizza. We savor it. It's sensual to us because I think it's wrapped into tradition and relaxing and heading into the weekend, right? Like, I think had we chosen tacos or something else that became that tradition, it actually really just goes back to those three S's and how we choose to eat that food, right? And then my other thing was I definitely have to learn to take my food to the next level, right? Like I look for food that's satisfying but almost kind of easy, right? So why do I love my steel cut oats? Super easy. I mix it up, I put it in the microwave, and I drive to work, and it's ready to eat.
Yeah.
But what if I put nut butter in it? What if I, how could I elevate it a little further? So I think that's something I could totally work on, and it would make my food experience so much more enjoyable.
Oh, yes. Thank you for sharing both of those things, both your Friday night family experience and also like wanting to upgrade your kind of normal foods that you eat on a regular basis. That's marvelous. And I would be curious to know, like, as you think about upgrading your foods, like how that satisfies you in a different way that you might not have expected, you know? Sometimes we can go on autopilot. Routine is marvelous because we're like anticipating hunger. We can have that safety of knowing that food is there for us, but sometimes we can go on autopilot and food just becomes a little mundane. And we can like tap into different levels of satisfaction when we try out something new, even like a slight variation, you know? Even something so slight. That doesn't take a lot of thought. I know I'm talking about like being on a mountaintop in the Swiss Alps while eating cheese, but I'm really just saying like, hey, try heavy cream instead of half and half. And that's actually a plug because I can't go back to half and half. I can't even stand it. Like heavy cream is the way. Heavy cream is the way in coffee. I know you're both coffee drinkers. I'm so sorry, but like can't go back to half and half once you've gone to heavy cream. Tell me I'm wrong. Prove me wrong. Amanda's like, I can't. You're so right. Bless you. Megan, again, I don't mean to put you on the spot. I just can't see your face, and I'd love you the opportunity to come here and share a takeaway if you'd like.
I think there's two takeaways. I think I'm definitely interested in exploring more like that hunger. I don't forget what you said, like to figure out like where I am in the hunger meter, because I find a lot of times in the morning, like when I wake up, I am not hungry at all.
Yes.
And then I go upstairs and I go into a meeting for work, and then it's 10:30 and I am like way over hungry.
Yeah.
And I need to learn to recognize it before it's over hungry.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something. And then I think a big thing too is like you know, everyone else said, is like adding that satisfaction to what I'm eating, because I find like a lot of times, and it's, you know, being new to intuitive eating, a lot of this is like past behavior that like I find that when I eat, I'm in that like in that window of tolerance. I'm in that like super low, like totally disconnected like state from it. And I think that trying to add that more satisfaction, like, and be more mindful about what I'm eating is like, will help me feel more satisfied and will help me kind of understand where's satisfied and where's full. Because I find like a lot of times I miss it. Like I'm full and I don't know how I got there.
That's so normal. We've all been there. So true. Megan, thank you for sharing both of those things, right? Like using the hunger meter and maybe, you know, honoring hunger sooner before hunger gets too loud. I hear you in that. And also like for satisfaction, like sometimes we just, you know, bypass and we're just kind of on an autopilot. How can we bring some more attention and awareness to how to make that food experience something a little bit more than the usual, a little bit more than just like we're eating and we're done? You know, how can we bring some more like attention and awareness to that? And I'm also like in your voice, Megan, I'm also like sensing like, and maybe this is me projecting, I'm not attached to this, but is there almost like an element of fun that you want to bring to your food experience? I'm just sensing that in your voice, a little bit of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely talking about the window of tolerance, I think I didn't realize how much I was in that like that hypo, that totally disconnected state until we had talked about that last week. So I think that, you know, I'm missing a lot of my body cues because I'm just totally disconnected from it.
Oh, I hear that so fully. And so I'm hearing now that like, how can we bring more like of consciousness to that eating experience so we can kind of attune to those body sensations a little bit more as they come up. Cool. Oh, so valuable. Thank you all so much for your time. This was so lovely to have you all here today. And let me know, like, thumbs up or sideways or down. Like, was this impactful for you? Did you feel like this was serving for you? Okay, cool. Rock on. And I hope to do more of these. You know, I feel like it's good to just put this information and have reminders. You know, food should be fun, and I just want to leave it on a note that like, if your food is unsatisfying in any way, explore that. That's a learning thing for us. It's normal to not have food be satisfying. And also, I want to leave you with the vision that like, food can be darn satisfying and one of the greatest pleasures in life, you know, and I want that for you. So with that, I will leave you. I'll stay on here for a little while if anybody wants to riff and answer questions, but I will not keep you. And I want to thank you sincerely for coming here today and sharing your Wednesday night with me.
All right. Thanks so much, Alicia.
Thank you, Amanda.
Nice to meet you guys.
Thanks, Alicia.
Thank you so much, Katie. Talk soon.
Have a good night. Talk soon.
Thank you.